Portland Paranormal Secrets. Skinwalker's Haunting Chronicles, 1995 to 2005, Chapter 1. Whispers in the night. The night was unusually silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the gentle rustling of leaves. David, a seasoned search and rescue professional, stood at the edge of Stroudwater River, his flashlight beam dancing over the water's surface. He had been called out for a routine search, but something felt off tonight. As he moved along the riverbank, his light caught something shimmering, a silver necklace, half buried in the mud. David bent down to pick it up, the cold metal sending a shiver up his spine. The pendant bore the initials MJ. He pocketed the necklace, making a mental note to check missing persons reports. Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the night. David's heart raced as he sprinted towards the sound, his boots splashing through the shallow water. But as quickly as it had come, the scream faded, leaving only the haunting echo of despair. David's radio crackled to life. "David, you hear that?" It was Mike, a fellow responder. "Yeah, I'm heading towards it now," David replied, his voice shaky. As he approached a dense thicket, David stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him for years. A woman, her clothes torn and face pale, lay motionless on the ground. Her eyes, wide with terror, stared blankly at the moonlit sky. David checked for a pulse, but it was too late. She was gone. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire among the emergency responders. Another unexplained disappearance, another body found near Stroudwater River. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Over the past few months, there had been a string of similar cases, all with one thing in common. The victims were found near the river, their faces frozen in terror. Whispers began to circulate among the responders. Some spoke of a Portland secret, a dark legend that had haunted the city for decades. Others dismissed it as mere superstition. But David couldn't shake off the feeling that something sinister was at play. One evening, as David pored over case files in his dimly lit office, a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway. It was Robert, a close colleague and friend. His face was ashen, and his eyes darted nervously. "David," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "you need to drop this. It's bigger than you think." David looked up, puzzled. "What are you talking about?" Robert hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to be listening. "There are things in this city, David, things that are best left alone. I've seen the evidence, heard the stories. Everyone knows, but no one talks about it." David's heart raced. "You're talking about the disappearances, aren't you?" Robert nodded. "It's not just the disappearances. It's what's behind them. There's something out there, David, something that hunts in the shadows. And it's been here for a long time." David leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What is it? What's hunting these people?" Robert's eyes filled with fear. "A skinwalker. An ancient shape-shifting entity that preys on the unsuspecting. It's been using Portland as its hunting grounds for decades. And it's getting bolder." David's mind raced. The necklace, the scream, the lifeless body by the river, it all began to make sense. But why hadn't anyone spoken up? Why the silence? Robert's voice trembled as he continued. "Everyone's scared, David. The police, the firefighters, even us. We've all seen the evidence, but we're told to keep quiet. To pretend it doesn't exist. But it does, David. And it's getting closer. David felt a chill run down his spine. He had to know more. He had to uncover the truth. But as Robert's words echoed in his mind, one thing became clear. He was about to venture into a world of darkness, a world where the line between reality and legend blurred, and where the hunter could easily become the hunted. Chapter 2. The Unseen Predator. Portland, with its rich history and picturesque landscapes, was a city that thrived on its green spaces. Parks, trails, and natural reserves were scattered throughout, offering residents a respite from the urban hustle. These green corridors, like veins, connected the city, allowing nature to coexist with urbanity. But as David was soon to discover, they also provided the perfect hunting grounds for something sinister. Baxter Park, with its sprawling lawns and dense tree cover, was a favorite among locals. Children played, couples picnicked, and the homeless often found refuge in its secluded corners. It was here, on a foggy morning, that the first recorded attack occurred. A jogger, out for her early morning run, stumbled upon a horrifying scene. A homeless man, known to many as Old Joe, lay motionless, his belongings scattered around him. His face, much like the woman by the Stroudwater River, was contorted in terror. The police were quick to dismiss it as a tragic accident, perhaps a heart attack. But those who saw the body whispered of the deep claw marks that marred his skin. Word spread, and soon, other stories began to emerge. Late-night walkers spoke of a shifting shadow that seemed to follow them on the trails. Some claimed it took the form of a large wolf, while others swore they saw a man with glowing eyes. But all accounts had one thing in common: a feeling of being hunted. David, still reeling from his encounter by the river, began to piece together the puzzle. He started visiting the green spaces, talking to locals, and collecting evidence. A torn piece of clothing here, a strange footprint there. His office, once a place of order, now resembled the lair of a madman, with maps, photos, and notes plastered everywhere. One evening, as David was poring over a map of Baxter Park, he received a call. The voice on the other end was shaky. "I saw it," the caller whispered. "The thing you're looking for. I saw it change, shift from a man to something else." David's pulse quickened. "Where? When?" The caller hesitated. "Near the old bridge in Baxter Park, just after midnight. But you must be careful. It's not just its form that changes. It can mimic voices, lure you into a trap." David thanked the caller, his mind racing. This was the lead he had been waiting for. But as he prepared to venture out, he couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. The authorities, who should have been at the forefront of the investigation, were eerily silent. No warnings, no advisories, nothing. It was as if they were deliberately turning a blind eye. Determined to uncover the truth, David decided to stake out Baxter Park. Armed with a camera and a flashlight, he settled in a concealed spot near the old bridge. Hours passed, and apart from the occasional rustling of leaves and distant hoots of owls, the night was uneventful. Just as David was about to give up, a chilling scream pierced the silence. Grabbing his camera, he rushed towards the sound. Through the dense fog, he saw a figure, its form constantly shifting, standing over a fallen body. David, hiding behind a tree, managed to snap a few photos before the creature, sensing his presence, let out a guttural growl and vanished into the night. The body, another homeless man, bore the same marks as Old Joe. David knew he had evidence, proof of the predator's existence. But as he approached the local police station the next day, he was met with hostility. "We've already ruled it an accident," the chief barked. "There's no need for your wild theories." "But I have photos," David protested, "eyewitness accounts." The chief's gaze turned icy. "I suggest you keep your findings to yourself unless you want to end up like them." David, realizing the depth of the cover-up, left the station, a mix of anger and determination burning within him. The unseen predator of Portland's green spaces had claimed another victim, and the very people meant to protect the city were complicit in its crimes. But David was resolute. He would expose the truth, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. The university's dark secret. The University of Portland, with its historic buildings and sprawling campus, was a beacon of knowledge and progress. Students from all over flocked to its hallowed halls, eager to carve out a future. But as autumn set in, casting long shadows over the campus, a palpable sense of dread began to permeate the air. It started with whispered conversations in the library, hushed discussions in dorm rooms. Students, especially those who stayed late for study sessions, were going missing. At first, it was dismissed as mere coincidence. Perhaps they had taken an impromptu trip or were buried under the weight of assignments. But as the numbers grew, panic set in. Amidst the fear, a tale began to circulate, a tale of a survivor. Lucy, a third-year literature major, had been studying late one night at the library. As she made her way back to her dorm, she decided to take a shortcut through Evergreen Cemetery, a decision she would soon regret. The moon, shrouded by clouds, provided little light. But as Lucy walked, she felt an unmistakable presence. A rustling behind her turned into footsteps, growing louder and more frantic. She dared a glance back and saw a figure, its form constantly shifting, giving chase. Heart pounding, Lucy ran, her breaths coming in short gasps. The creature, mimicking voices of her friends, tried to lure her off the path. But Lucy, driven by sheer adrenaline, managed to make it to the main road just as a car approached. The creature, thwarted by the headlights, retreated into the shadows, leaving Lucy trembling by the roadside. Word of Lucy's harrowing escape spread like wildfire. David, upon hearing the tale, knew he had to speak to her. He found her in a campus cafe, her once bright eyes now clouded with terror. As David gently probed, Lucy recounted her ordeal. "It was like nothing I've ever seen," she whispered. "One moment it was a man, the next a wolf. And the voices, it was like it was inside my head." David, showing her the photos he had taken at Baxter Park, watched as Lucy's face drained of color. "That's it," she murmured. "That's the thing that chased me." As they spoke, David learned of campus legends that had been passed down through generations. Tales of a creature that hunted at night, preying on unsuspecting students. Many dismissed it as an urban legend, a story concocted to scare freshmen. But Lucy's encounter gave credence to the tales. Determined to get to the bottom of it, David approached the university authorities. But much like the city police, they were dismissive. "It's just stories, Mr. David," the dean said with a wave of his hand. "Students have a flair for the dramatic. I suggest you focus on real issues and not get caught up in campus gossip." But David, with the weight of evidence and eyewitness accounts, knew better. The university, much like the city, had a dark secret. And as the nights grew longer, casting the campus in an eerie glow, David realized that the hunt for the truth was far from over. Chapter 4. Midnight Joggers. Portland, with its scenic routes and cool evening breezes, had always been a haven for joggers. The city's intertwining trails, especially those that ran alongside its rivers and through its parks, provided the perfect backdrop for those looking to escape the day's stress. As the fitness trend grew, a new subset of runners emerged, the midnight joggers. These were individuals who, either due to work commitments or personal preference, chose the cloak of darkness for their runs. David, in his quest to uncover the truth, often found himself on these trails, not as a jogger, but as an observer. He'd noticed an alarming trend. The majority of the recent disappearances and attacks were centered around these very trails, particularly near bridges and overpasses. These structures, often dimly lit and isolated, provided the perfect hunting ground for the unseen predator. One evening, as David was poring over his notes, he made a startling discovery. The attacks weren't random. They followed a pattern, coinciding with specific moon phases, particularly the new moon, when the night was darkest. This revelation sent a chill down David's spine. The creature, it seemed, was not just a mindless beast. It was strategic, using the darkness as its ally. A few days later, a morning walker made a grim discovery on the West End Bridge, an abandoned jogger's shoe, its laces still tied, hinting at a sudden and violent struggle. David, upon hearing the news, rushed to the scene. The shoe, a popular brand among runners, was stained with mud and what looked like deep scratch marks. Nearby, in the soft earth, were footprints, those of a human and something much larger. Determined to prevent further attacks, David decided to warn the community. He organized a town hall meeting, inviting joggers, local authorities, and concerned citizens. As he presented his findings, pointing out the pattern of attacks and the significance of the moon phases, he was met with a mix of reactions. Some, especially those who had experienced close encounters or had lost loved ones, nodded in agreement. Others, including some local officials, were skeptical. "It's just a coincidence," one official remarked. "Portland is a safe city. These are isolated incidents, and there's no need to spread panic." But David, undeterred, pressed on. "We have evidence, eyewitness accounts, and now a clear pattern. We cannot ignore the threat any longer." A local jogger, a middle-aged woman with a steely determination in her eyes, stood up. "I was attacked," she said, her voice quivering. "2 weeks ago, near the Baxter Park overpass. I barely escaped. Whatever it is, it's real, and it's hunting us." Her testimony added weight to David's claims, but the authorities were unmoved. They dismissed the meeting, advising joggers to stick to well-lit areas and avoid running alone. But David knew this was far from enough. Frustrated but resolute, David took matters into his own hands. He began patrolling the trails during high-risk moon phases, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature and, if possible, gather more evidence. He also started a community watch group, urging joggers to run in pairs or groups. As the days turned into weeks, the number of attacks decreased. But David knew this was just the calm before the storm. The unseen predator of Portland was still out there, waiting for its next opportunity. And David, with a growing band of allies, was determined to stop it once and for all. Chapter 5. Forbidden Desires. Portland's parks, with their sprawling greenery and secluded corners, had long been a sanctuary for more than just nature enthusiasts. As the sun set and shadows lengthened, these spaces transformed into secret rendezvous points for those seeking clandestine encounters away from prying eyes. The thrill of Forbidden Desires, coupled with the cover of darkness, drew many to these spots. One such evening, as the city lights twinkled in the distance, a couple, lost in each other's embrace, ventured deeper into the woods of Deering Oaks Park. The world around them faded as passion took over. But their intimate moment was soon interrupted by an eerie rustling. Dismissing it as just another nocturnal creature, they continued, unaware of the eyes watching them. Suddenly, a chilling growl echoed through the trees. The couple, startled, looked around, their eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. What they saw next would haunt their dreams for years to come. A figure, its form constantly shifting, emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with malevolence. The couple, paralyzed with fear, watched as it circled them, the air thick with tension. With a final guttural growl, the creature lunged, but the man, driven by adrenaline, managed to fend it off with a fallen branch. The Skinwalker, momentarily stunned, retreated, allowing the couple to make a desperate escape. Word of their harrowing encounter spread, adding another layer to the growing legend of the Skinwalker. David, upon hearing their story, decided to visit the park. As he walked the trails, he made a startling discovery. Near the sites of recent attacks, trees bore strange symbols, carved deep into their bark. The symbols, a mix of geometric patterns and what appeared to be ancient script, were unlike anything David had seen. Intrigued, David began researching the symbols, delving into Portland's history and indigenous lore. Theories began to emerge. Some believed the symbols were protective wards, placed by ancient tribes to contain the Skinwalker. Others speculated they were summoning signs, used by those who sought the creature's power. But one theory, in particular, caught David's attention. The Skinwalker, according to local legend, was once a shaman who, consumed by dark desires, transformed into the malevolent entity. The symbols, it was believed, were a reminder of its human origins and a tether to the physical world. As the days turned into weeks, David's obsession with the case grew. His once orderly life was now consumed by maps, photos, and scribbled notes. Sleepless nights were spent poring over ancient texts, trying to decipher the symbols and their connection to the Skinwalker. One evening, as David sat in his office, a shadowy figure appeared at his window. It was the same couple from the park, their faces pale and eyes haunted. "We need to talk," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. The couple, it turned out, had been researching the Skinwalker long before their encounter. They had discovered a ritual, passed down through generations, that could potentially trap the creature. But they needed David's help. As they laid out their plan, David realized the gravity of the situation. The Skinwalker was not just a random predator. It was a force of nature, bound to the city by ancient ties. And as the trio delved deeper into the mystery, they knew they were racing against time. The next moon phase, when the creature would be at its most powerful, was fast approaching. And Portland, with its forbidden desires and dark secrets, was the perfect hunting ground. Chapter 6. Night Shift Nightmares. Portland's medical community, a tight-knit group of dedicated professionals, prided itself on providing round-the-clock care to its residents. Hospitals buzzed with activity even in the wee hours, with doctors, nurses, and other staff working tirelessly. But the late-night shifts, while essential, came with their own set of challenges. One of the most daunting was the walk home. The streets, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, were mostly deserted, save for the occasional taxi or late-night reveler. For many health professionals, the journey home, though short, was a time of vulnerability. It was on one such night that Amelia, a young nurse known for her cheerful demeanor and dedication, finished her shift at the Portland Medical Center. As she bid her colleagues goodbye, pulling her coat tighter against the chilly breeze, none could have predicted it would be the last time they'd see her. The next morning, as Amelia's absence became apparent, concern grew. Calls to her phone went unanswered, and her apartment, when checked, showed no signs of disturbance. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. David, hearing of the disappearance, felt a familiar dread. The hospital's proximity to several green spaces and its network of dimly lit alleys made it a prime spot for the Skinwalker's hunting grounds. Determined to find answers, David decided to go undercover, posing as a security guard at the hospital. Night after night, he patrolled the corridors and surrounding areas, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive creature. While his efforts seemed fruitless, a breakthrough came one evening when he was approached by a fellow guard. "You're looking for answers, aren't you?" the guard whispered, handing David a USB drive. "Check this out. But be discreet." Back at his office, David plugged in the drive, and a series of CCTV footage clips loaded. Most were mundane, showing the usual hospital activity. But one clip, time-stamped just 2 nights after Amelia's disappearance, sent shivers down his spine. The footage, grainy and slightly distorted, showed the hospital's back entrance. Amelia, recognizable in her nurse's uniform, stepped out, glancing around before starting her walk home. But as she walked, another figure emerged from the shadows. At first, it appeared to be a man, possibly a colleague. But as David watched, the figure's form began to shift, morphing into something larger, more menacing. Amelia, sensing the danger, began to run, but the creature, now in full pursuit, was faster. The footage ended abruptly, leaving David in stunned silence. The creature's ability to take human form was something he hadn't considered. It wasn't just hiding in the city's green spaces. It was hiding in plain sight, blending in, making it even more dangerous. David's resolve strengthened. The stakes were higher than ever. The Skinwalker, with its shape-shifting abilities, could be anyone, anywhere. And as the city slept, unaware of the predator in its midst, David knew he was its only hope. The hunt was on, and the line between hunter and hunted was becoming increasingly blurred. Chapter 7. Alleyway Horror. The city's diners, with their neon signs and retro charm, were a staple of Portland's nightlife. Locals and tourists alike flocked to these establishments for comfort food and a taste of nostalgia. Among the most popular was Rosie's Diner, known for its blueberry pancakes and the ever-smiling waitress, Clara. Clara, with her fiery red hair and infectious laughter, was the heart and soul of Rosie's. Regulars adored her, and newcomers were quickly charmed by her warmth. But one fateful night, the diner's cheerful atmosphere was shattered. It was a particularly busy evening. The diner was filled with the hum of conversations, the clinking of cutlery, and the aroma of freshly cooked meals. Clara, taking a much-needed break, stepped out into the alleyway for a quick smoke. Minutes turned into hours, and when Clara didn't return, concern grew. A search was quickly organized, and what they found in the alleyway was a scene of pure horror. Clara, or what was left of her, lay in a pool of blood, her body mutilated beyond recognition. The news of the brutal attack sent shockwaves through the community. David, hearing of the incident, felt a sinking feeling in his gut. The alleyway's proximity to a green corridor and the nature of the attack bore the unmistakable signature of the Skinwalker. Determined to find answers, David visited the crime scene. The alleyway, now cordoned off, was a grim reminder of the previous night's events. But as David examined the area, he noticed something peculiar. On the walls, hidden in the shadows, were the same symbols he had discovered earlier. Their presence confirmed his worst fears. The Skinwalker was involved. Intrigued by the symbols and their potential significance, David delved deeper into their origins. His research led him to Native American legends, tales passed down through generations that spoke of creatures that walked the line between man and beast. The symbols, it seemed, were not just random carvings. They were a part of a much larger narrative. Seeking clarity, David decided to approach the local tribal elders. Their knowledge of ancient lore and traditions was unparalleled, and if anyone had answers, it was them. The elders, a group of stoic men and women with deep-set eyes that held centuries of wisdom, listened intently as David recounted his findings. When he finished, there was a heavy silence, broken finally by the eldest among them. "You speak of the Skinwalker," he began, his voice a low rumble. "A creature of legend, born from darkness and greed. It is said that those who seek power beyond their means can become skinwalkers, forever cursed to roam the earth, their hunger insatiable." David, absorbing the information, pressed on. "Is there a way to stop it?" The elder sighed, his gaze distant. "The legends speak of a ritual, a way to trap the Skinwalker and break its curse. But it is dangerous, and those who attempt it risk becoming the very thing they seek to destroy." David, realizing the gravity of the situation, thanked the elders for their wisdom. As he left, the weight of his mission bore down on him. The Skinwalker, with its ancient origins and insatiable hunger, was a formidable foe. But David, armed with knowledge and a burning desire for justice, was ready for the challenge. The battle for Portland's soul had just begun. Chapter 8. Gangland Terror. The underbelly of Portland, while not as notorious as some major cities, had its share of darkness. Gangs, with their intricate hierarchies and territorial disputes, operated in the shadows, their activities often clashing with law enforcement. The East Side Cobras, one of the city's most formidable gangs, ruled their turf with an iron fist. But one night, their reign of terror met an adversary unlike any other. It began as a routine operation. A few members of the Cobras were in Lincoln Park, chasing down a debtor who had been evading them for weeks. The park, with its dense foliage and winding paths, provided the perfect cover. But as they closed in on their target, an eerie silence descended. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged a figure, its form constantly shifting. The gang members, taken aback, reached for their weapons, but the creature was faster. In a blur of motion, it lunged at the nearest member, its claws tearing through flesh and bone. The aftermath was gruesome. One member's arm lay a few feet away, brutally torn from its socket. The rest of the gang, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the creature, with a final guttural growl, disappeared into the night. The park, once a symbol of the cobra's dominance, had become their graveyard. News of the attack spread like wildfire. David, ever vigilant, saw an opportunity. While gangs were often tight-lipped, especially with outsiders, the sheer terror of the encounter might make them more willing to talk. Approaching the cobras was risky, but David was undeterred. He managed to secure an interview with the traumatized gang member, now an amputee, in a discreet location. The man, his tattoos a stark contrast to the hospital gown he wore, recounted the events of that fateful night. "It wasn't human," he whispered, his eyes darting around nervously. "One moment it was a man, the next a beast. We didn't stand a chance." David, showing him the photos and symbols he had collected, watched as the color drained from the man's face. "We've heard rumors," he admitted. "Stories of a creature that hunts in the city's green spaces. But we never believed them. Until now." But as David delved deeper, he hit a wall. The police, in a bid to maintain order and prevent panic, were quick to clamp down on the incident. The official statement spoke of a gang dispute, with no mention of the creature. The gang member, already traumatized, was further threatened with fabricated charges if he spoke out. David, realizing the extent of the cover-up, knew he had to tread carefully. But as the days turned into weeks, something unexpected happened. His pursuit of the truth began to attract allies. Informants, from various walks of life, reached out, offering tidbits of information, sightings, and even ancient texts. The Skinwalker, it seemed, had affected more lives than David had initially thought. As his network grew, David began to piece together a more comprehensive picture of the creature's movements, habits, and potential weaknesses. The battle was far from over, but with a growing list of allies, David felt a renewed sense of hope. The Skinwalker, once the hunter, was now the hunted. And David, with the city's fate in his hands, was ready to strike. Chapter 9. Close encounters. The city's youth, with their boundless energy and thirst for adventure, often found themselves exploring Portland's many nooks and crannies. From abandoned buildings to dense forests, there was no shortage of places to discover. But as the legend of the Skinwalker grew, so did the tales of close encounters. One evening, at a local hangout spot, a group of teenagers gathered, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of a campfire. As the night wore on, the conversation turned to the Skinwalker. Each had a story to tell, tales of narrow escapes and chilling chases. Jake, a lanky teen with a mop of curly hair, recounted his experience. "I was biking through Evergreen Cemetery," he began, his voice shaky. "It was getting dark, and I decided to take a shortcut. But as I rode, I felt like I was being watched. I turned around, and there it was, its eyes glowing, its form shifting. I pedaled as fast as I could, and I swear, it was right behind me. I barely made it out." His story was met with nods of agreement. Others shared similar tales, each more terrifying than the last. The Skinwalker, it seemed, was not just targeting adults. It was going after the city's youth as well. David, having heard of the gathering, decided to attend. As he listened to the teenagers' stories, he began to see a pattern. The locations, the timings, the nature of the attacks, all pointed to a chilling conclusion. The Skinwalker was using the city's green spaces as its hunting grounds. Armed with this knowledge, David began plotting the attack sites on a map. The result was undeniable. A clear pattern emerged, with Baxter Park at its epicenter. The park, with its dense foliage and proximity to the river, provided the perfect cover for the creature. Determined to catch the Skinwalker in the act, David organized a stakeout. Gathering a group of volunteers, including some of the teenagers who had had close encounters, they set up camp in Baxter Park. Equipped with cameras, night vision goggles, and other surveillance equipment, they waited. Hours turned into days, and just when it seemed like the stakeout would be fruitless, a chilling howl echoed through the park. The group, on high alert, scanned the area. And then, from the shadows, it emerged. The Skinwalker, in all its terrifying glory, stood at the edge of the clearing. Its form constantly shifted, making it hard to focus on any one aspect. Its eyes, however, remained constant, glowing orbs that seemed to pierce the very soul. David, heart pounding, stepped forward. The creature, sensing his presence, turned its gaze to him. The two locked eyes, a battle of wills playing out in the silence of the night. The Skinwalker, with a final guttural growl, retreated, disappearing into the darkness. The group, still in shock, began to pack up. The stakeout, while terrifying, had provided valuable insights into the creature's behavior. And David, having come face to face with the Skinwalker, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle was far from over, but with each encounter, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The Skinwalker, once a mere legend, was now a tangible threat. And David, with the city's fate in his hands, was more determined than ever to put an end to its reign of terror. Chapter 10. Breaking the silence, the weight of the truth bore heavily on David. Each encounter, each piece of evidence, and every whispered tale only solidified the reality of the Skinwalker's existence. But with the mounting evidence came an ethical dilemma: to keep the knowledge hidden, as many before him had done, or to break the silence and expose the truth to the world. After much contemplation, David made a resolute decision. The people of Portland deserved to know the danger lurking in their midst. With a fervor, he began compiling his findings, meticulously documenting each incident, eyewitness account, and piece of evidence. The result was a comprehensive journal, aptly titled The Portland Skinwalker Chronicles. With the journal in hand, David approached various media outlets, hoping to shed light on the Skinwalker's reign of terror. But the response was not what he expected. Instead of interest, he was met with skepticism and ridicule. Many dismissed his claims as mere urban legends, while others questioned his credibility. Undeterred, David decided to self-publish the Portland Skinwalker Chronicles. The journal, available both in print and online, quickly gained traction. Residents, both believers and skeptics, flocked to read the chilling accounts. The city was abuzz with whispers, debates, and theories. But with the newfound attention came unforeseen consequences. David began receiving anonymous threats, warning him to cease his investigations and to retract his claims. Phone calls in the dead of night, shadowy figures tailing him, and cryptic messages became a daily occurrence. Even more concerning was the reaction of his allies. Many, fearing for their safety and reputations, began to distance themselves from David. Some publicly denounced him, while others simply disappeared. The tight-knit group that had once stood by his side in the face of danger was now fractured. One evening, as David returned home, he found a package on his doorstep. No return address, no markings, just a plain brown box. Inside was a single object, a crude wooden figurine, resembling the Skinwalker, surrounded by the same symbols he had discovered earlier. Accompanying the figurine was a note, written in a shaky hand: "Stop now, or suffer the consequences." The message was clear. David was treading on dangerous ground, and powerful forces, both human and supernatural, wanted him silenced. But instead of deterring him, the threats only fueled his determination. The Skinwalker's reign of terror had gone on for too long, and David, despite the odds stacked against him, was not about to back down. As he sat in his office, surrounded by notes, maps, and the ever-watchful figurine, David made a vow. The truth, no matter how terrifying, would be revealed. And he, with the weight of the city's fate on his shoulders, would be the one to expose it. The battle was just beginning, and David was ready for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 11. Unearthed Secrets. Portland, with its rich history and architectural charm, held many secrets. Beneath its cobblestone streets and historic buildings lay stories waiting to be told. David, realizing that the key to understanding the Skinwalker's reign of terror lay in the past, decided to delve deep into the city's archives. The public library, with its vast collection of newspapers, journals, and manuscripts, became David's second home. Day after day, he pored over old documents, searching for any mention of mysterious disappearances, unexplained incidents, or references to the creature. His diligence paid off. Buried in a newspaper from the early 1900s was a chilling account of a series of disappearances near Stroudwater River. The victims, much like the recent cases, were last seen near green spaces and often during specific moon phases. Even more disturbing was the mention of a shadowy figure, seen near the sites of the disappearances. As David dug deeper, he discovered more such incidents, each eerily similar to the next. It became clear that the Skinwalker's presence in Portland was not a recent phenomenon. It had been hunting the city's residents for decades, if not longer. But with the mounting evidence came a startling realization. The city, it seemed, had an unspoken pact to keep the Skinwalker's existence a secret. Incidents were downplayed, witnesses silenced, and evidence destroyed. The cover-up was systematic and far-reaching, involving not just the authorities but also influential figures in the community. David's research led him to a name that appeared repeatedly in connection with the cover-up: the Order of the Silent Veil. Digging further, he uncovered the existence of a secret society, its origins dating back centuries. The order, comprised of Portland's elite, was dedicated to one singular purpose: protecting the Skinwalker's existence. The reasons for their allegiance to the creature were unclear. Some documents hinted at a pact, a promise of power and prosperity in exchange for silence. Others spoke of a curse, a punishment for a grave injustice committed by the city's founders. Whatever the reason, the Order of the Silent Veil went to great lengths to ensure the Skinwalker's secret remained buried. David, realizing the magnitude of his discovery, knew he was treading on dangerous ground. The Order, with its vast resources and influence, was a formidable adversary. But the truth, no matter how well guarded, had a way of coming to light. As he sat in the library's dimly lit reading room, surrounded by stacks of documents, David felt a mix of fear and determination. The Skinwalker, with its ancient origins and insatiable hunger, was just one piece of the puzzle. The real battle lay ahead, a battle not against a supernatural entity but against the very fabric of the city itself. The stakes were higher than ever, and David, with the weight of history on his shoulders, was ready to unearth the secrets that had been buried for far too long. The truth, no matter how dark, would be revealed. And Portland, with its unspoken pacts and hidden agendas, would never be the same again. Chapter 12. The final confrontation. The weight of the revelations bore heavily on David. The city he loved, with its rich history and vibrant community, was entangled in a web of deceit and dark pacts. But the truth, now within his grasp, demanded action. David knew that to truly expose the Skinwalker and the forces protecting it, he needed to bring it into the light. With a plan forming in his mind, David began organizing a public gathering. Evergreen Cemetery, with its historical significance and connection to the Skinwalker's sightings, was the chosen venue. Through social media, word of mouth, and discreet invitations, David rallied the city's residents. The event, billed as a night of remembrance for the Skinwalker's victims, promised to be a turning point in Portland's history. The night of the gathering arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. Hundreds of attendees, their faces illuminated by candlelight, filled the cemetery. Whispers of anticipation, fear, and hope mingled in the air. David, standing at the center, began recounting the Skinwalker's reign of terror, the city's complicity, and the need for truth and justice. But as he spoke, an eerie silence descended. A cold wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing the candles and plunging the area into darkness. Panic ensued as attendees tried to make sense of the sudden change. And then, from the shadows, it emerged. The Skinwalker, its form constantly shifting, stood at the edge of the gathering. Its eyes, glowing with malevolence, scanned the crowd. The attendees, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the creature began its advance. David, realizing the gravity of the situation, sprang into action. Using a flare gun he had brought as a precaution, he fired into the sky, illuminating the area with a bright red glow. The Skinwalker, momentarily disoriented, halted its advance. Seizing the opportunity, David rallied the attendees. "Stay together. Don't let it divide us," he shouted, guiding them towards the cemetery's exit. The Skinwalker, sensing its prey slipping away, let out a guttural roar and lunged at the crowd. But David, with a courage born from months of pursuit and determination, stood his ground. Using another flare, he charged at the creature, driving it back. The Skinwalker, faced with David's unwavering resolve, hesitated. The two locked eyes, a battle of wills playing out in the midst of chaos. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the Skinwalker retreated. With a final, haunting howl, it disappeared into the night, leaving behind a shaken but unharmed crowd. The aftermath of the confrontation was a mix of relief, gratitude, and more questions. The Skinwalker's unexpected appearance had confirmed its existence to the city's residents, but its motivations and origins remained a mystery. David, hailed as a hero for his efforts, knew that the battle was far from over. The Skinwalker, while momentarily defeated, was still out there. And the forces protecting it, now exposed, would be more determined than ever to maintain the status quo. But as the attendees left Evergreen Cemetery, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. The city, once held in the grip of fear and silence, was waking up. And David, with the truth on his side, was ready to lead the charge. The final confrontation had ended, but the quest for answers had just begun. Chapter 13. Aftermath. The dawn that followed the confrontation at Evergreen Cemetery was unlike any other in Portland's history. The city, once bustling with the hum of daily life, was eerily silent. The events of the previous night, with the Skinwalker's public appearance, had sent shockwaves throughout the community. The creature, once dismissed as an urban legend, was now a terrifying reality. News outlets, both local and national, were abuzz with reports of the confrontation. Eyewitness accounts, videos, and photos flooded social media. The Skinwalker, with its shifting form and malevolent presence, was the talk of the town. But with the exposure came a mix of reactions. While many hailed David as a hero, praising his efforts to expose the truth, others were more skeptical. Conspiracy theories abounded, with some claiming the entire event was a hoax or a publicity stunt. The city's authorities, in a bid to maintain order, downplayed the incident, attributing it to mass hysteria. But David, now at the center of the storm, faced a more immediate threat. The Order of the Silent Veil, with its vast resources and influence, viewed him as a liability. Threats, both veiled and overt, became a daily occurrence. Shadowy figures tailed him, his home was vandalized, and his communications were intercepted. The culmination of these threats was the mysterious disappearance of the Portland Skinwalker Chronicles journal. David, having stored copies in various locations, discovered that each had been systematically destroyed or stolen. The journal, with its meticulous documentation and evidence, was now lost to the world. Faced with mounting danger and the realization that he was up against powerful forces, David made a difficult decision. To protect himself and those he loved, he decided to go into hiding. Leaving behind his home, his career, and the city he loved, David disappeared from the public eye. But his legacy lived on. The events at Evergreen Cemetery, the revelations about the Skinwalker, and the city's complicity became a part of Portland's lore. Whispered tales, underground publications, and secret gatherings kept the truth alive. And while David's whereabouts remained a mystery, hints of his continued efforts began to surface. Anonymous posts, bearing his unmistakable writing style, appeared on various forums. Each post, while cryptic, hinted at more stories, more revelations, and more battles to come. The Skinwalker, with its ancient origins and insatiable hunger, remained a constant threat. But David, even in hiding, was not about to give up. The quest for truth, justice, and redemption was far from over. And as the city moved forward, with its secrets and shadows, one thing was clear: the battle between man and legend was just beginning. Chapter 14. Legacy. The passage of time has a way of healing wounds, but it also has the power to etch certain events into the annals of history. David's confrontation with the Skinwalker and the subsequent revelations about Portland's dark secrets had left an indelible mark on the city and its residents. Portland, once a city of simple pleasures and historic charm, was now a place of whispered tales and watchful eyes. The streets that once echoed with laughter and camaraderie now bore silent witnesses to the city's divided opinions. While many believed in the Skinwalker's existence, attributing the unexplained disappearances and chilling encounters to the creature, others remained skeptical, dismissing the accounts as mere urban legends. But David's legacy was not confined to the tales of the Skinwalker. His relentless pursuit of the truth, his courage in the face of danger, and his dedication to justice had inspired a new generation of truth-seekers. Across the city, individuals began coming forward, sharing their own encounters with the supernatural. From shadowy figures in the woods to eerie voices in the night, the stories painted a picture of a city teeming with mysteries. One of the most significant contributions to David's legacy was the discovery of his secret recordings and notes. Hidden in a concealed compartment in his home, the recordings provided a first-hand account of his investigations, interviews, and theories. The notes, meticulously maintained, offered insights into the Skinwalker's behavior, patterns, and possible origins. The recordings, once made public, sent shockwaves throughout the community. David's voice, calm and measured, recounted the chilling encounters, the cover-ups, and the battles with the Order of the Silent Veil. The notes, with their detailed observations and sketches, provided a roadmap for future investigators. But perhaps the most tantalizing aspect of the discovery was the promise of more revelations. David, in one of his recordings, hinted at other chronicles, other tales that were yet to be told. "The Skinwalker is just the beginning," he said. "There are forces, both ancient and new, that call Portland home. And I intend to uncover them all." The city, with its newfound awareness, awaited these revelations with bated breath. David, even in his absence, had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of the relentless pursuit of truth. And as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, one thing was clear: David's legacy was far from over. The Chronicles, with their tales of terror and triumph, were just the beginning. And Portland, with its secrets and shadows, was ready for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 15. Epilogue. The sun cast a golden hue over a quaint cabin nestled deep within the woods. Birds chirped, and the gentle rustling of leaves painted a serene picture. It was here, away from the prying eyes of the world, that David had found solace. Inside the cabin, walls lined with books and maps bore testament to a mind that never rested. David, though physically removed from Portland, remained mentally tethered to the city and its mysteries. His days were spent researching, documenting, and connecting the dots, always vigilant, always seeking. Yet, life in hiding had its moments of peace. The solitude allowed David to reflect, to understand the magnitude of his discoveries, and to prepare for what lay ahead. Letters, sent anonymously to trusted allies, kept him informed of the happenings in Portland. The city, post the Skinwalker revelations, had transformed. What was once whispered in hushed tones was now debated openly. Portland had split into two factions: the believers, those who had either experienced or trusted the accounts of the Skinwalker's existence, and the skeptics, who dismissed the tales as mere urban legends. Cafes, once abuzz with daily chatter, now hosted heated debates. Universities offered courses analyzing the sociological impact of the Skinwalker phenomenon. Tourists, drawn by the allure of the supernatural, flocked to the city, hoping for a glimpse of the unknown. But amidst the debates and discussions, a singular truth emerged. David's efforts had not been in vain. His legacy, the Portland Skinwalker Chronicles, had opened the city's eyes. People were more vigilant, more questioning, and most importantly, more united. One evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows over the cabin, David sat down to record a message. His voice, though showing signs of age, retained its firm resolve. To the people of Portland, he began, "The truth is out there, and what we've uncovered is only the beginning. The Skinwalker, though elusive, is a testament to the mysteries that surround us. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and always seek the truth. As the recording ended, a chill ran down David's spine. An all too familiar feeling of being watched, a presence lurking just out of sight. He approached the window, peering into the woods. And for a brief moment, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back. The Skinwalker, it seemed, was not done with Portland. Or with David. The city, with its tales of terror and legacy of truth, awaited the next chapter. And as the line between reality and legend blurred, one thing was certain. The battle between man and myth was far from over. If you have enjoyed our dive into the Chronicles of Portland's paranormal style of No Sleep Tonight scary stories, please visit us at Paranormal-Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to connect us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professional team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal Untold Stories.